Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Kaf Tet 29 of Maseches Avodah Zarah. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. We are in the middle of discussing a variety of remedies and illnesses, as Charlie mentioned at the end of the day yesterday. Just in case you were thinking of observing these things, Rav Shiragon and many others have said, Rav Shiragon led Pimpadisa in the 10th century, advises against following these remedies. So please don't try them at home. And so we begin on the fifth line from the bottom of Kaftet Amabet Amar of Yehuda. So Amar of Yehuda Zibura, a bee or a hornet is the way they translate it here. Udecharze Silva, or if you have some kind of thorn that has pierced your skin. So simta, or you got a blister, or somebody's got an eye pain, an eye ache, ishta, or some kind of, so these are likely to come as a result of a fever. Kulu be bone sakanta. All of them, if you were to go and take some kind of bath, that would be actually dangerous for it. So with that background as that sometimes things can be dangerous for certain conditions, I think we all know that that's the case. So chama lechama. So you use a radish for a fever, and silka litzina. And if you have like a cold and chills, well, then you should take beets. Interesting to think that borscht is sort of anyway. The chilufa sakanta. I mean, I think there are people that would tell you that borscht has always been but in any event, and the opposite though is dangerous. So the fact is that if you switch it around, and you try to use the radish for the chills or the beets for the fever, you're going to be in trouble. Chamimi la'akraba. If you should use a hot for a scorpion, Vikariri lizibura, and cold for a hornet, for a wasp. V'chilufa sakanta, and again, you switch it around and you're in trouble. Chamimi lisilva, hot for a thorn. Ukariri, as we turn to Kafteram at Aleph, L'chaspanisa. Chaspanisa, Rashi tells us, Chuspanisa, Sadgin b'shabifnei Adam. You got like these holes or fissures in a person's face. So, this translates as facial scabs, but it seems to be some kind of like pock marks. So maybe I don't know whether it's some kind of acne or something, but it's probably more dangerous than that because it's certainly something that they seem to be concerned about. The chilufa sakanta, but again, switching it around is going to be dangerous. Chala l'sibure, you use vinegar for bloodletting. Uminune lisanisa, and you use small fish if you're fasting. So depending on what you're taking. And again, v'chilufa sakanta, you don't want to take the small fish after bloodletting, and you don't want to have vinegar after fasting. Takle sibura sakanta. So if you have cress and combine it with bloodletting, that's going to be dangerous. Ishta visibura sakanta, and similarly, bloodletting with a fire is going to, with a fever is going to be dangerous. Ka'iv eina visibure sakanta, and again, if you combine bloodletting with an eye ache, that's going to be a problem. Sheni ledag dam. Then we're going to, a play on words. Two for a fish is blood, meaning that the second day after you eat fish, that's when you should do the bloodletting, not on the first day. And sheni the dam dag. And after, similarly, in the other direction, if you want to have fish, wait 2 days until after you've done the bloodletting. Shalishi lo sakanta, but the third day is dangerous. So Tanul Rabbanan. So hamak is dam, when it comes to somebody who's engaging in bloodletting, lo yochel chachbash. you shouldn't have a chet, a gimel, a bet, and a shin. So what are they talking about? Lo chalav, you shouldn't have the chet is milk. Lo gavina, not cheese. Lo betzalim, not onions. Lo shechalim, and not cress. Im achal, and if you did eat it, how do you deal with it? So Amar Abaye, 90 reviyasa dechala u reviyasa dechamra. So then take a revius of vinegar and a revius of wine, uvinarbinahu bahadi adadi, and you mix it all together. Vinishte, and then you drink it. V'chi mipnei, and then when you're going to use the bathroom, lo mipnei elo lemizracha shel ir. You got to make sure that you go to the east side of the city, because if we know our weather patterns, weather travels generally, not always, but generally from west to east. And so as a result, the winds that are associated with the weather patterns generally tell you that if you are east of the city, the bad smells are going to continue towards the east and not go into the city. It's not that it's never going to happen, but it's going to happen less. And the Gemara recognized that. In fact, we say in connection with the property laws that we dealt with in Basra, that if you're going to build something that smells, you should build it to the east of the city. Mishum de kasharecha, because again, the odor is going to be bad for people, and so we don't want anybody else to smell it. It's always good advice, and so as a result, you should go to the east of the city. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi ma'alin avankale b'Shabbos. We can raise up or straighten the avankale on Shabbos. Well, my avankale, what is that avankale? So Rabbi Abba is tumcha deliba. It's some kind of istumcha deliba. Let's take a look at Rashi. It's again Kaf Tedam Aleph 169, about 10 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. Istamuche deliba dovne basar shetakas halev. It's some kind of flesh wall that exists underneath the heart, Vuhu tarpasha, and it's referred to as tarpasha. So that's one possibility. Vilishna achrina, another way to understand it is tanuch shekeneged halev. It's some kind of lobe that is opposite the heart. Shekorin nivla, that is called the nivla. Upamim, and sometimes shenikafef litzad panim. It bends inwards instead of outwards. Maybe I'll ask our doctor if he knows what this could possibly.
Well, it sounds that either it's the pericardium, which covers the heart, or it could be the diaphragm.
Yes. I think the first one is understood to be the diaphragm, and the second one is the pericardium. That I've seen that. I think that's what I've seen.
Well, when it says dofne basar shetached alev, I would think that seems like more the pericardium, because that surrounds the heart.
Maybe I got it. Maybe I've got it mixed up. Maybe I was tarfasha. That's the pericardium,
but
as opposed to nivla. But since these pieces, these anatomy, unfortunately, that level of anatomy I don't remember. I'm not sure I ever learned. But in any event, certainly. So the point is, and what happens if it's bent inwards? It makes it more difficult to breathe. So maybe that does make a lot of sense for it to be diaphragm.
The diaphragm, because the diaphragm is usually more concave upward. So then if it would be bent the other way, you're not able to expand. Let me think. Yeah, I think you don't able to expand it.
It would be more difficult to get the breaths in and out.
Right.
And that's what Rashi thinks is the real explanation. So he prefers the as per Ken's interpretation, prefers the diaphragm explanation. So Mayasu. So how do you fix it? So Maisi Kamona Karvaya. You bring some cumin in a ladle, vininya, and you bring mint, v'agdana, and v'asaftida, v'tzisrei, and some kind of savory thing, v'avdasa, and hyssop grass. And you bring it all together, and you have that mixture. Now, how do you process that mixture? Meaning, what is the medium in which that mixture is imbibed or ingested. So laliba, when it's for your heart, bachamra, you use a base that is wine. The simanach and the sign, the way you remember that you use wine in as the base for this mixture is because because a wine gladdens the heart. So the point is that when you're looking for a heart remedy, you should use wine.
If one
Larucha,
is reading, it's an interesting coincidence. If one is like I do, but reading daily Tehillim according to the day of the month, that phrase is in today's Tehillim. It's a daf, it's
a Daf Yomi coincidence.
and
That's
it
awesome. I love it.
and that's in Baruch Nafshi that one reads on
Yes,
Rosh
yes, on
Chodesh.
Rosh Chodesh,
So that's
100%.
in today's Tehillim.
Ah, I did not know that, but Yeshikoach. So Larucha b'maya, and then when it comes to the issue, the concern of rucha, and Rashi interprets it as lishachafat, it's the kind of wasting away shemachmat ruach as a result of some kind of breathing issue. So here it suggests that maybe it's some kind of asthma. So yishta elu b'mayim. So then Rashi continues that you should use it in water. You should drink these items in the water mixture. So for the heart, you use the wine. For the asthma, you use the water, v'simanerich, and the way you remember that is v'ruach Elokim miracheves al pnei hamayim, right? This is from Bereshis, the creation story, that the spirit of Hashem was hovering over the surface of the water. So you have the word ruach and mayim right there together, and that's going to help you remember it. Lechuda, when it comes to childbirth, b'shikra, well, then don't use wine or water, use beer. The simanach, and how do I remember it? Not quite actually the same words, but the similar words. The kada, right, with respect to
Rachel.
al shichma. Well, kada and kuda are very similar, and even though they don't mean anything, kada is a jug and huda is her childbirth, and shichma has at least the first two letters of shechra, and so again, that's just the way that you can remember what it is that you're supposed to do, that if it comes to childbirth, you should use beer as the medium. Okay.
Rachel, when she went to Yaakov, she was lifting the water for the shadows.
Exactly. Well, this is when Eliezer, who we don't know is Eliezer, but is the servant of Abraham, comes, right, and she has the jug on her shoulder.
Rivka, that's right. It's
Rivka, that right, exactly. Rivka, that's what I meant. Okay, I don't know. Okay, anyway. Rav Acha Brei de Rava Shachik Lehu Lechulu Bahadi Adadi. And the Rav Acha would actually grind them all together. The Shakil lay Milah Chamesh Etzba Aseh, and then take 5 fingers of the mixture, meaning he would grab it with his fist, the Shasilay, and then he would drink it with whatever liquid he was supposed to. So the point is that he would mix the ingredients before crushing them. Rav Ashi shachad kol chad v'chad l'chudei. Rav Ashi, however, had a different view. He crushed them each individually. V'shakel mala etzba'ei v'rabasei umala etzba'ei zutarti. And he would take a pinch of each of them, and then, of course, he would add the liquid. Amarav Papa, Ana Abdi L'chol Hani. I tried both of these. V'lo istasai, but I didn't get cured of my condition. Ad Amr Liahutaya, until a particular Arab merchant said to me, Aiti Kuzachadta, take a new jug. You got to be careful. Can't have any contaminants in the mixture. Umal Yamai, and fill it with water. Urmei be tarvada dedufsha, and add to it a spoonful of honey. The talibe kochave, that was left under the stars overnight, meaning leave it out overnight. Ulamachar ishte, and then drink it the next day. So of the haki, when I did that, the istasai, and then I got cured. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan. So some last
cover it. You have to cover it though, right?
Well, actually, it's interesting that you say that. That's
because the snake issue with the snakes, right? There was
yes, 100%. Now, that does not necessarily apply to all liquids. It only applies to liquids that snakes would be interested in. And we are actually going to, that is the topic that in 2 days, we are going to be discussing the concept of uncovered liquids and whether or not, and the concern that snakes could actually put their poison into those liquids. We don't have that concern in most places today because we don't have that level of commonality of snakes. But there are some who stay concerned. Although I will note that I don't believe that concern actually is in Shulchan Aruch. But again, there are even later commentaries that do continue to apply that concern. And certainly, if you're in a place with lots of snakes, you should be concerned. All right. So Tana Rabbanan, Shisha Dvarim Merapin Esachol Mechayo. There we have 6 things that we know can help make a person feel better. Urafua tan refuah. And then when they get better, it's going to be a complete refuah. The Elohain, kruv, cabbage, utradin, beets, mesisin yavesha, water of a dry pennyroyal. I have no idea what that is.
They translate here as chamomile.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Kevas, maw, the maw of an animal. The heres, the womb of an animal. Vayoseres hakaved, and the diaphragm. V'yesh omrim, and some say av dagim katanim, even small fish will also help you feel better. V'lo od, and not only do small fish help you get better, elish dagim katanim mafrin umarbin kol guvo shel adam. They make you fruitful and strengthen your entire body, and so that's there's an idea that fish multiply, and so as a result, if we have fish, then we will multiply as well.
Are you saying Yotera Kaved diaphragm? Because the word for diaphragm is sarefet, and Yotera Kaved could refer to a lobe of the liver, because the liver.
Yeah, I know. That's what it's interesting. That is what way I always understood Yoseres HaKaved is a lobe of a liver in the Torah, but here in the Art Scroll it definitely defines it, says and the diaphragm. So I don't have a great answer for that question, but you're absolutely right that was the way I had also understood it generally.
Steinstock pointed out that chamomile has been used as a medical herb for a very long time.
Wow. All right. Well, that doesn't surprise me either. All right. Yeshua Cox, thank you for sharing that. Asara devarim machazirin esachol yo. But there are some things that you have to be careful about. 10 things that can get you sick again. V'chal yo kashen, that can be actually even worse than your original. Ve'eluhain, and these are they. So ha'ochel basar shor, if you eat the meat of an ox. Shuman, if you eat the fatty meat. Basar tzli, roasted meat. Basar tziparim, poultry. Ubeitz tzluya, roasted eggs. Vishachalim, and cress. Usiglachas, if you shave. Umerchatz, if you take a bath, if you do too much in the way of bathing. Uganiva, when it comes to cheese.
Gavina.
And liver. And of course, here we have kaved just being used earlier by Yoseres HaKaved being referring to the diaphragm, but here it's, kaved is its usual meaning of liver. V'yesh omrim af egozim, and some people say that even nuts can be problematic. V'yesh omrim af keshuim, and some people say even cucumbers. And Tana Debei Rabbi Yishmael, it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael, Lama Nikra Shman Kishuin. Why are they called Kishuin, which has a relation to the word kasher? Because they are hard and difficult for the body, just like a sword. All right, so that has completed our review of maladies and remedies, and now we get back into the Shakla V'Tarya of the Gemara, and we talk about one of the items that was mentioned in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah noted that Rabbi Meir prohibited getting a haircut from an idolater even in public. So the Gemara now quotes, and whereas the Chachamim said that in public it's okay, but in private it's problematic. So the Gemara quotes and analyzes a related brisa. So ve'ein mistaper mehen v'chol hamakom. That's the quote from our Mishnah. So Tana Rabbanan Yisrael hamistaper ba'ovid kochavim. If a Jew is getting a haircut from a non-Jew, from an idolater, roa b'mara, he should make sure to see what he's doing in a mirror. And Rashi tells us b'mara. First of all, he gives us mirdver in Old French. Liros es im mistaper yafeh be'umanos. To make sure that the guy is doing a good job. And in fact, most barbers put you right now in front of a mirror. And so why is that successful? Why will that protect you? We're going to see this in the Gemara, but Rashi tells us right now. The idolater is going to think, Kaven to cup it, because you are careful about how you look, about your appearance. Ahachi chashavhu, you must be an important person. Umisyare lahorgo, and then he will be scared to kill you. So the point is that it's very important, on some level, the respect that we show ourselves is the respect that others will show us as well. And if an idolater is getting a haircut from a Jew, so once you get to his livloris, now remember we saw this much earlier in the Masechet, that this is a special lock of hair that is grown for idolatry. The next Rashi says, livloriso, shehu megadel avodas, he grows it specifically for his idol. And shomet es yado mikodem lekain. And so you have to be careful to stop cutting before you get there. Shlosha etzbos, 3 fingers. Lekol ruach, on every side. As the Gemara is going to explain, kedei shelo yehei mitakna, because we don't want you to fix it. Because doing anything to fix this is part of his idol worship. So you have to be careful. So shomet es yado. So that you got to stop your hand. You got to stop cutting the hair. Amar Mar Yisrael mistaper me'ovid kochavim roa b'mara heichidami. Why is it that looking in the mirror is going to help? And what's the situation? Because if you're in public, lama limara, what do you need the mirror? The rabbis already told us that in public everything's okay. And if you're in private, kiroa maihami, what good does being able to see yourself in the mirror? So la'olam birshos hayachid, really. This is following the rabbis, and in Rishus HaYachid, we're dealing with a situation where it's you can see yourself, and therefore it's going to be okay. The kaven to ikamara mischazik ka'adam chashav. You're going to look like an important person, as Rashi has told us, and as Rashi foreshadowed. So the point is that they'll be afraid to kill you, and therefore that will protect you. Rav Chana bar Bizna have mistaper me'ovid kochavim b'shvile d'naharda. He was in the roads of leading into Neharda when he was getting a haircut by an idol worshiper. Amrlay, and the barber said to him, Chana, yai ko eich lazuga. Oh, Chana, your throat is really appealing to my razor. Amar, teisi li de avre de Rabbi Meir. Oh, I shouldn't have violated Rabbi Meir's condition, because Rabbi Meir says that whether it's in private or in public, it's going to be a problem. And the point is that according to the rabbi, the Gemara asks, Adarabanan lo avar. 1 second. The rabbis say that you shouldn't do a haircut in private, period. So and the streets of leading into Narda, the Shvile Narda, that is going to be the pathways into Narda. That's going to be not a very public place. So Amar de Amar Rabbanan, didn't the rabbi say that Birshus Harabim, Birshus Hayachid Miyamar, right? They said that you could only get a haircut in public. They didn't say you could get it in private, the way this person was getting, the way Rav Chana was getting, Rav Chana Bar Bizna was getting a haircut. So how come he's focused on Rebbe Meir? Because who savar shvili darnada kevan deshuchiche rabim kirishus harabim damu. He thought that even though it's not truly a public thoroughfare, it was enough public that it would be okay, and therefore he didn't think he was violating the rabbis, and that's why he was doing it. And so as a result, that's why he was doing it, and that's why he thought that if he was violating anybody, he was violating just Rebbe Meir. Now Tosfos here.
Well, who is the man the Omar above, where it says Amar Mar, and he says even Bereshuta Yachid, if there's a mirror, one could allow a non-Jew to do the haircutting.
So that was the brisa that we saw at the very, when we began our discussion. That's referring, the Amar Mar is referring to the brisa that we just quoted 2 seconds before that.
Yeah, but who's the Mar?
So it's an unattributed brisa. Now, an unattributed brisa, I think, is Rebbe Yehuda, but I'm pretty sure it's not Rebbe Meir, because otherwise then you'd have an inconsistency.
You'd have a stira. Then you'd have a
stira,
stira.
exactly. It would appear to be a stira. Although it could be, you could have interpreted it that even Rebbe Meir would say, well, when you have a mirror, it's going to be okay, because then you're going to look like an important person. But in any event, that's the bottom line. The who savar. Okay, so now two things. So let's first do Tosos. Second Tosos on Kafteram and Aleph. Avalo bino lebeino. We said that when you're alone, you're not allowed to get the haircut according to the rabbis. Perish, but when we say that, we don't mean literally alone, as Tosas is going to explain. Perish b'makom she'ein regilin b'nei adam. It's just in a place where there aren't usually a lot of people. Kol kach, that many. Ki hahi d'Rav Chana b'shvili d'Arda. Like the pathways into Narda. If you're in a neighborhood that is not well traveled, well, then you need to be concerned about getting a haircut. About b'yichud mamish. But if we were talking, because we can't be talking about being alone together with the barber literally, because lo itzrich, you wouldn't need to tell me that you're not allowed to do that. To tepikle af below mistaper, because even when you're not with a barber, usher lehit yachedi mahem, you can't be alone with an idolater. Mishum shvichas damim, because we're worried about the person coming to the idolater murdering you. And similarly, when we said that you have to be careful about nursing, that too is a situation where you can't be alone. It doesn't mean literally alone. It means just in private where there are fewer people and just not too many people. Okay, so that was point number one I wanted to mention. Point number two that I wanted to mention is that the Yerushalmi on our Mishnah tells another story of a barber astrologer who saw that the Jews would spill his blood. So he saw through astrology that the Jews are going to spill his blood. So as a result, he killed every Jew that came for a haircut. There's a debate, did he kill 80 Jews or 300 Jews? In the end, though, he converted, and the blood of Mila was what he had seen. And when the rabbis learned that he had done what he had done, they prayed, and they returned him to his original condition. Now, very unclear what exactly that means, but I thought it was an interesting story that is said in connection with our Mishnah and deals with the barber and highlights the fact that we have to be careful. You should, go to Jewish barbers if you can.
What condition did they return him?
It's unclear. It seems like they returned him to being a non-Jew. Of course, that's problematic because how do you undo a conversion? You're not supposed to be able to undo a conversion. Other possibilities is they returned him to his original condition, meaning into a before you were created, literally into nothingness, essentially. So there are a couple of different ways that one can interpret that, but it's a story that is worthy of note. So as a result, I thought I'd share it. Okay.
Things on that. One is the story of that non-Jewish barber reminds me of Sweeney Todd.
Yes, yeah, I hear you.
And second, at least according to Paula, my wife, the custom for women, for Jewish women, is to only have their hair cut in private because of not allowing people to see their hair.
Right, 100%. So two things about that. One is, of course, obviously, if it's only women that are in the store, that's one thing. And two is, but yes, and of course, a private barber can be Jewish. You can always use a Jewish barber. Okay, so
Yeah.
now we go to the.
It's interesting though that that's not even mentioned here.
What, going to a Jewish barber?
Or no, the need for women.
Oh, the need for women. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I think, yes. I mean, it is interesting that it's not specifically discussed, but there are lots of places in the Gemara where the Gemara doesn't note the fact that there are, potentially different rules that would apply to women. So now you have an idolater getting a haircut from a Jew. Yes, yado. You have to stop your hand when you get to his levloris. V'kama. So how much do you have to give? How much space do you have to give? As Rashi told us, Amar Rav Malkia, Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava, Shlosha etzbos l'chol ruach v'ruach. You have to give 3 fingers in every direction. Now we just quoted Rav Malkia. There is a Rav Malkia and there's a Rav Malkiyo. And so, having just quoted Rav Malkiya in the name of Rav Ada bar Ahava, we now tell us this general rule that how you can remember the subjects of the statements by Malkiya versus Malkiyo. Amar Rav Chanina Barei de Rav Ika Shapud. When it comes to a spit, this is the law that a spit is generally muksa after it's been used on Yantif to roast meat because it's not appetizing. But Rav Malkiyo rules in the name of Rav Ada bar Ahava, just as again here was also Rav Ada bar Ahava, that the spit can be moved out of its place, meaning you can put it to the side so that it's not interfering in your space. So that's rule number 1. Shvachot, when it comes to maidservants. So in connection with maidservants, if a woman comes into a marriage with a lot of maidservants, so then she can put her obligations on these maidservants to serve her husband. She doesn't need to do it herself, and she could just relax and do whatever she wants. But Rabbi Eliezer says that no, she needs to be worried about being too idle, and therefore she does have to do some things. And Rav Malkiyo, in the name of Rav Ada bar Ahava, says that Rabbi Eliezer is correct, that we have to be worried about that. So that's number 2. And number 3 is the gumos. And when it comes to gumos, when it comes to holes or pores, so and what's that talking about? The idea is that in general, when it comes to determining the age of majority, you need to have 2 pubic hairs. They need to grow from 2 separate pores. It can't be from one. And Rav Malkiyo says that and again, also in the name of Rav Ada bar Ahava, so that's why it can be very confusing, again, because our guy in our Mishnah, in our Gemara was Rav Malkiya, as opposed to Rav Malkiyo. So he says in the name of Rav Ada bar Ahava that just the presence of those 2 pores where you think it would be growing hair, even if the hairs fell out, we assume that they grew and that they fell out and not that they haven't yet grown. And therefore, again, that would be sufficient to be sure that the person is an adult from the Torah. So those are the 3 that are Malkiyo. And below Reese, the hair that we just talked about, of course, that's our Gemara. Afer, when it comes, Afer Mikla, the ash from an oven, and the ash from an oven is referring to a situation where you're not allowed to put that on a wound in order to heal it, because that ash is so hot that it will leave a permanent mark and it looks like a tattoo. And so as a result, we say, don't do that. And when it comes to gvina and it comes to cheese, and with respect to cheese, we're going to see tomorrow that cheese made by idolaters is prohibited for consumption. And Rav Malkiya in about a week is going to give in the name of Rav Ada bar Ahava that the reason is because idolatrous manufacturers used to coat their cheeses with lard. And so as a result, that's the reason that you're not allowed to buy those cheeses. And so those 3 are Rav Malkiya as opposed to Rav Malkiyo. So Amar Rav Papa, Masnisen umasnisen Rav Malkiya. When it comes to when Masnisen umasnisa Rav Malkiya. When it comes to a Mishnah or a Brisa, that's going to be Rav Malkiya. Shmatusa Rav Malkiya. But when it comes to a discourse, which is talking about an Amoric reading, then it's going to be Rav Malkiyo, excuse me. V'simana, and how do I remember? Masnisa Malkasa, that when it comes to Malkasa with an then Malkiyah, then it's talking about Mishnayos. So my Benai, what's the difference between Rav Chanina's statement that telling us specifically which three are in each direction? So Ika Benayu Shvachot, that when it comes to the Shvachot, and now it also is also true for the oven ash case as well, but these when it comes to the Shvachot, that is actually of Rav Malkiyah. And so the Malkiyah is the hair in our case, the according to Rav Papa, the maidservants and the cheese. And again, according to the other view, it would be the hair, the ash, and the cheese. Okay, so that tells us who it is. And now we come to our next Mishnah, and our next Mishnah identifies additional items that are going to be prohibited. So let's take a look. These things are prohibited. Hayayin, the wine. And if a non-Jew had wine, an idolater had wine, and it got and changed to vinegar, that would also be prohibited. V'cheres hadaryani, and similarly Hadrianic or earthenware, the oros levuvin, and heart-pierced skins. Rashi tells us, let's do cheres hadronyanim. The Gemara mefarish, the Gemara will explain shishorein b'mayim, that these kind of earthenware vessels would be soaked in water, v'yotze yayin hanivlabo, in order to get the wine that had been absorbed by the vessel out and be able to drink it. Oros levovin, and when it comes to the skins that have their hearts pierced, shekorein kineged aleh, because what they would do is they would cut an animal open opposite its heart. Darkan la'asos kain labos kacham. That would be their usual practice with respect to idol worship. Umotzian as a lave, and they would pull out the heart derech hanekev, through the hole. Umitzar, and so as a result, that's why this is going to be prohibited, because mishum zivchei mesim, because this is like an offering to dead. Zivchei mesim is sort of a generic way of saying an offering that is to an idol. Okay, so and then Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel clarifies that when is it a problem? Bisman she'akera shelo agul asur. It's only prohibited when it's a round incision, because that indicates that they pulled the heart through it. Mashuch mutar. But if in fact it's just a straight incision, so then they would not have pulled the heart through it, as Rashi says, mashuch mutar she'ein osin kain lavodas kacham. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, that's not how they would do it if they were going to engage in the idolatrous service. So basar hanichnas la'odas kochavim mutar, meat that enters, meaning that is on its way into a place of idol worship, that is still going to be permitted if it was kosher meat in the first place. But once it leaves the place, then we have to be worried. We're worried that it may be meat from the sacrifice of the dead. So that's Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. Haholchen, now that we talked about going in and going out, here we are going to note the opposite is true. Haholchen letarfus asar l'seis v'latate imahen. When you have a pilgrim going out to serve an idol, you should not do business with them on their way to the idol. But v'habayin mutarin. But when they're coming back, then you can do it, because you're worried that they're going to use anything that you said. Even though we generally say, even though on some level we shouldn't be worried about the actions of non-Jews, the truth is that we are, and that we say, just as we don't do lifnei iver in front of a Jew, we don't do lifnei iver in front of a non-Jew, and you would not be allowed to sell him something that might end up being used on his pilgrimage to worship the idol. Nodos ha'ov, back to the objects that we can't use. Nodos ha'ovdei kochavim, when you've got the flasks, and Rashi tells us that we're talking about leather flasks, the kankanehen and their jugs, and Rashi tells us that we're talking about earthenware jugs, the yayin shel Yisrael kanus behen, and you have them with Jewish wine in them, asurin, they become prohibited. V'isuran isur hana. And not only are they prohibited, but you're not allowed to get benefit from them. And this is the prohibition of having wine that has been even touched by a non-Jew if it is open. Divrei Rebbe Meir. And we're going to get to the concept of Yain Mavushal shortly. That's what Rebbe Meir says. It's not actually a prohibition of the benefit, and so it's only a prohibition of the consumption. And similarly, the grape seeds and grape peels of idol worshippers are prohibited. This is the leftover, what you have from making wine or making grape juice. And again, it's a prohibition of benefit. Different Rebbe Meir. That's Rebbe Meir says. No, lachin asurin, yiveshin mutarin. If they're moist, then they're forbidden. Maybe it's because they have wine still in them. And they would be prohibited even when it comes to hana. But if yiveshin mutarin, but if they're dry, then it's going to be permitted. Hamuryas, when it comes to muryas, and Rashi tells us this is some kind of shuman shel dagim. It's some kind of fat from fish, and grinas base unyaki, and the cheese of the beit unyaki, which is a shel avdei kochavim, that belongs to idol worshippers. Asurin is prohibited. V'isurin isur hana, and the prohibition is of the benefit. Divrei Rebbe Meir, v'chachamim omer ein isur hana. No benefit, no prohibition on the benefit, just the prohibition on the consumption. Rabbi Yehuda, shal Rabbi Yishmael, shal es Rabbi Yoshua, kishahayu mahalkim b'derech. So Rabbi Yehuda reports on the following conversation. Rabbi Yishmael asked Rabbi Yoshua while they're on the road, Amrlo, mimnei ma asru gvinos ovdei kochavim. Why did they prohibit cheese of idol worshippers? Amrlo, Rabbi Yeshua responds, because they used the rennet of a dead animal, and the rennet of a dead animal is prohibited. So Amar Lo, but second, Bahalo Kivas Ola Chamura Makivas Nevela. But 1 second, the rennet of an Ola would be more forbidden than an Nevela, because an Ola you're not allowed to even get benefit from. You can't just not consume it. And yet, Imru Kohen Shadaito Yafa Shorfa Chaya. And they said that a Kohen who has a good sense about him, that he can have it raw. But and Rashi explains, what does it mean to have a good sense about him? Daito yafa she'eno katz umuaspa. If he's not disgusted by drinking the rennet raw from the animal, it would be permitted for him. And below hodulo. Now, in fact, the rabbis don't agree with this position, and they say that it's prohibited. And lichatchila laomrin kain, as Rashi says, lo hodulo laomrin kain lahetera lichatchila. They don't say that it's permitted to consume this raw rennet from an ola lichatchila. But the point is that the rennet is considered a separate item. This is an item in the animal's stomach, and the question is what is considered part of the animal, and what is considered something that's just in its stomach and not part of the animal. And so as a result, according to this, the rennet isn't part of the animal. So aval amru einen and lo mo'alin. We say that you can't get benefit, but you don't commit me'ila if you do, because it's not a biblical prohibition. And so as a result, how can you explain this? So Amrlo, no, the issue wasn't that they were going to use a treifim rennet, but they were using idol worshiping rennet. So Amrlo imkain lama lo asarua bahana. But if that's true, if they were using idol worshiping rennet, you should not only not be able to buy the cheese of non-Jews, you shouldn't be able to benefit from the cheese of non-Jews, of the cheese of idol worshippers. So he's siula davar acher. So Rabbi Yeshua changed the topic, and Rashi tells us lo ratza legalos davar habaror. He didn't want to explain this detail specifically, because the Mefarsh b'Gemara time, and the Gemara is going to explain this further, although not today. Amar lo.
Question about this.
Yeah.
Rennet animals is basically never used to make cheese in the United States.
Okay.
So
So why is it? Yeah, that is way beyond our topic for the moment. But we're going to get more into the cheese question over the coming days. But it's not. But it's a good question because if the rennet is the issue, why isn't that? Why isn't it sufficient for it? And it's an excellent question.
At one time it was used. I remember going back 30, 40 years ago. We had from the shul. He investigated
right,
certain cheese and so forth. So that
Yeah,
was a problem
could
years
be.
ago.
All right. So
especially in my lifetime.
yeah. So Amrlo, Rabbi Yeshua changes the topic. Yishmael, he says, Yishmael, Hech Atakora. How do you read the following verse, the second verse in Shir Hashirim? Ki tovin dodecha miyayin, because you're better than wine is your love. So, ki tovin dodayech. Or do you say better is your love than wine? Meaning the point is that is it a woman speaking to a man, right? The conversation in Shir Hashirim is a man and a woman speaking to one another. In general, when we understand it metaphorically, we understand that the woman in that case is the Jewish people, and the man is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But in any event, however you decide it, which is it that it's referring to, who is speaking in this second verse? So Amar Lo, so Rabbi Yishmael says, Kitov and Dodayach. I think that it's the feminine, that your love, that it's speaking to the Jewish people, where Hashem is effectively saying that the love of the Jewish people is better than wine. Amar Lo, Rabbi Yeshua says, 1 second, Eina Davarkin. That's not the case. Sharei Chaveru Milamed Alav. The next verse, the neighbor tells us about it, meaning that the next verse explains how we know that it's got to be the woman talking to the man. L'reach shmanecha tovim, because it says your shmanecha, your oils are better than have a good fragrance. So, and the verse, as Rashi explains further, the verse ends that with alumot avuka, that you're the maidens love you, and so the maidens love you shows that the addressee in these verses has to be male. So okay, so that ends our Mishnah. So the Gemara now asks Yayin Minolan, how do I know that wine's going to be prohibited? Amar Rabba Baravua, Amar Kra, Asher Chelev Zvachemo Yochelu Yishtu Yayin Nisicham. So this is a verse from Dvarim. It's from what's it called? From what parsha? After Nitzavim Vayelech is Hazinu. It's from Parshas Hazinu. And it's part of the poetry of Hazinu, and it's Hashem speaking that the Jewish people, would eat the fats of the offerings, meaning the non-kosher offerings, and they would drink the wine of their libations, meaning the non-kosher libations, the libations to idolatry. So ma zevach aser b'hana. So just as the sacrifices are prohibited to benefit from, so too the wine is prohibited to benefit from. So how do we know that the offering itself is prohibited? Because we have another pasuk. This is a pasuk in Tehillim that says that they attached themselves to Baal Peor and ate the offerings of the dead. Again, connecting the dead to offerings. So ma meis aser b'hana, av zebach nami aser b'hana. So we're doing a sort of like a chain here, that just as the dead you're not allowed to benefit from, so too you're not allowed to benefit from the idol, from a sacrifice to an idol. Umeis gufei minala. How do I know that you're not allowed to benefit from the dead? Asya sham me'egla rufa. Yeah, well, we have a gzeira shava that sorry for not scrolling. We have a gzeira shava that says that that you're not allowed to that connects two topics. Ksiv hakav atamasham Miriam, that Miriam died there. That's the death. Uksiv hasam, and in connection with Egla Rufa, it says va'arfu sham esa Egla banachal, that they decapitate the calf there in the valley. So ma lahalan aser bahana afkan nami aser bahana, just as the Egla Rufa you're not allowed to benefit from, so too you're not allowed to benefit from the dead. V'hasam minalan. Well, how do you know about the Egla Rufa? So Amri debei Rabbi Yanai kapara ksivba kadoshim, that when it says with respect to the Egla Rufa, it has the word kapara, atonement, there, specifically in in the end of Dvarim, it says Perek Kaf Aleph Pasuk Chet, Kaper la'amcha Yisrael, and many times in connection with the sacrificial animals. So, for example, it says it in Vayikra Aleph Perek Daled. It says it refers to kapara as well. All right, so we'll pause there. Even I've done a little bit further, but the details of the sacrifices was a little long. So we will pick up from the 2 dots, God willing, tomorrow. A reminder: tomorrow is Zoom only. I will not be here, and then similarly, this coming Wednesday I will not be here, and so as a result, it will also be Zoom only. Wishing everyone a wonderful week and looking forward to continuing our learning together.
Thank you.
Before you go, I want to make a suggestion, and I'd be
Yes.
willing to. We are supposed to finish this effective the day after Labor Day, and I would like to. We have not had a formal CM for quite a while. Given how interesting this topic is, I would propose that Labor Day night we have a dinner at HAR and invite the congregation. Obviously, they have to be charged for the food, and do a real CM, which we've not had for a long time.
I love that idea. Let me reach out to Rav Stephen and see whether or not that's possible.
And that night is also my father's yard site, which makes that.
Okay. Very meaningful. All right.
Yeah, so please out. Thank
I will, God willing, copy you on an email. Just if you send, I think I have your email address, but just in case, send me an email and that will remind me.
Oh, I don't know that I have yours. But
okay.
It's charles.hall@einsteinmed.edu.
Okay, that's good to know. All right. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much.